point would be for the United States, and this is on a personal note, as I look at our presence and I look at our time and our experiences in Afghanistan, I'll tell one more story here then. And that is, as the ambassador, I flew down in 2009 to Helmand Province. Helmand Province is in southern Afghanistan, and that's the center of the narco-trafficking industry. When I flew down, as I got off the got off the helicopter in Helmand, I was greeted by a very dynamic Marine Lieutenant Colonel and my State Department team and my USAID team on the ground, and they gave me some great briefings about what was going on. The U.S. Marines had lost a considerable number of their ranks over the last several months as they pushed the Taliban out of this district and then restored security. I met with, after the briefings, some Afghan tribal leaders from that district. They took me around the village and they walked with me through some of the irrigation canals that are found in that particular district. And I had a Marine security detachment with me, I had some, my State Department team, my development team, and off we went with these Pashtun tribal leaders. And with a very good interpreter with me, one of the Pashtun tribal leaders said, "Ambassador, do you know what these irrigation canals are here?" And I knew, but trying to be a good diplomat, I said, "No, tell me about them." And so this Pashtun tribal leader, with his very colorful turban on, he said, "Ambassador, this goes back to the 1950s when USAID, that's the U.S. Development Agency, was here and built the powerful Kajaki Dam in northern Helmand, and then this remarkable irrigation canal system that helped transform this province into a breadbasket." So on we went, and he said, "By the way, Ambassador, do you know where Roger is?" And I had to go through the interpreter and said, "Roger?" And Roger turned out to be a USAID engineer of the 1950s who was a very young engineer, befriended this tribal elder when he was a very young man. And so this tribal elder was saying, "Do you know where Roger is?" He must have expected I was from Roger's tribe, and I'd know who Roger was. And I said, "Well, tribal elder, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I'll check." And he said, "Boy, Roger was he was a great person here. He was very popular in this village." We walked on a little bit further, and then another tribal elder said, "Ambassador, do you know where Bob is?" True story. And I said, "Bob?" He said, "Ambassador, Bob, he was here in the 1960s as a young man at that time, and he was a Peace Corps volunteer after President Kennedy had set up the Peace Corps. He taught us English, and we remember Bob used to walk around in tennis shoes and blue jeans. He lived here in the village, and we really remember Bob." The story goes on and on, all during the day then, walking around this community, hearing stories about the United States of the 1950s and 60s. I got on the airplane that evening then, Jim, to fly back to Kabul. And usually as a soldier and ambassador, I would get on a helicopter or a plane, and within 30 seconds, I'd be sleeping. That's where I'd catch up on sleep. But this time on the flight back to Kabul, I was having great difficulty sleeping. I couldn't sleep, and I was wondering what was wrong. And what was wrong was this, is that I reflected back on that day, and what I knew was that those brave Marines who had fought so hard and lost so many of their numbers to secure that Pashtun village, they would not be remembered by the Afghan people. Sadly, they would not be remembered. Who would be remembered was Roger from USAID and Bob from the United States Peace Corps. So the final point I would make is then, I know there's that expression of Joe Nye about soft power and hard power. And what I walk away with for the experience of Afghanistan and a long military career is that what made the United States great was the Bobs and the Rogers, the USAIDs and the Peace Corps, What has made also the United States great is a military that can hold the line and defend the gains that the Rogers and the Bobs make.